Investment principles and investment products of Islamic banking. Islamic banks do not directly deal in money. They run business with money. The funds of Islamic banks are mainly invested in the following modes. 1. Mudaraba. Mudaraba is a shared venture between labor and capital. Here bank provides with entire capital and the investment client conducts the business. The profit is to be distributed between the bank and the investment client at a predetermined ratio while the bank has to bear the entire loss. 2. Musharaka. Musharaka means partnership business. Every partner has to provide more or less equity funds. Both the bank and the investment client reserve the right to share in the management of the business. But in practice, the investment client normally conducts the business. The profit is divided between the bank and the investment client at a predetermined ratio. Loss is to be borne according to capital ratio. 3. By murabaha, contractual buying and selling at a markup profit is called murabaha. The client requests the bank to purchase certain goods for him. The bank purchases the goods as per specification and requirement of the client. The client receives the goods on payment of the price, which includes markup profit as per contract. Under this mode the purchase price and profit are to be disclosed separately. 4. Bimutual. Bimutual is a sale on credit. It is a contract between a buyer and a seller under which the seller sells certain specific goods to the buyer at an agreed fixed price payable at a certain fixed future date in lump sum or within a fixed period by fixed installments. 5. Salam and parallel salam. Salam means advance purchase. It is a mode of business under which the buyer pays the price of the goods in advance on the condition that the goods would be delivered at a particular future time. Parallel salam. Parallel salam is a salam contract whereby the seller depends, for executing his obligation, on receiving what is due to him, in his capacity as purchaser from a sale in a previous salam contract. 6. Istisna and parallel istisna, a contract executed between a buyer and a seller under which the seller pledges to manufacture and supply certain goods according to specification of the buyer is called istisna. An istisna agreement is executed when a manufacturer or a factory owner accepts a proposal placed to him by a person or an institution to produce certain goods for the latter at a certain negotiated price. Here, the person giving the order is called mustasni, the receiver of the order is called sani, and the goods manufactured as per order is called masnu'. Conditions and characteristics of istisna. A. The concerned agreement must contain the details, such as the type, class, quantity and features of the goods to be produced, so that no misunderstanding is created later on. B. The price has to be settled, payment schedule and modes thereof is to be predetermined. C. When, where, and on whose cost the goods to be supplied has to be clearly mentioned. D. If agreed by both parties, payment may be made in advance to the seller in part or in full, or may be deferred to be paid in due course. E. Generally time frame is not mandatory for supplying the goods under istisna agreement. But in case of bank, time frame for supplying goods must be determined to avoid any dispute in future. F. Condition for imposing stipulated compensation may be included in the istisna agreement against the party who breaches the terms of the agreement, causing the other party to suffer. But no compensation would be imposed on any party if it happens for any valid reason or unavoidable circumstances. G. As per opinion of the contemporary jurists, the compensation in case of istisna may be treated as legal income. Parallel istisna. If it is not stipulated in the contract that the seller himself would produce the goods or services, then the seller can enter into another contract with third party for getting the goods or services produced by the third party. Such a contract is called parallel istisna. This may be treated as a subcontract. The main features of this contract are: A. The original istisna contract remains valid even if the parallel istisna contract fails, and the seller will be legally liable to produce or provide the goods or services mentioned in the istisna contract. B. istisna and parallel istisna contracts are treated as two separate contracts. C. The seller under the istisna contract will remain liable for failure of the subcontract. 7. Ijara, the mode under which any asset owned by the bank, by creation, acquirement, or building up is rented out is called ijara or leasing. In this mode, the lessee pays the bank rents at a determined rate for using the assets and returns the same to the bank at the expiry of the agreement. The bank retains absolute ownership of the assets in such a case. However, at the end of the leased period, the asset may be sold to the client at an agreed price. 8. Ijara muntaya bitamlik, hire purchase under this mode, the bank purchases vehicles, machineries, and instruments, building, apartment etc. and allowed clients to use those on payment of fixed rents in installments with the ultimate objective to sell the asset to the client at the end of the rental period. The client acquires the ownership or title of the assets subject to full payment or adjustment of all the installments. 9. Hire purchase musharaka mutanakaza, HPMM. Hire purchase musharaka mutanakaza means purchasing and acquiring ownership by one party by sharing in equity and paying rents for the rest of the equity held by the bank or other party. Under this mode, the bank and the client on contract basis jointly purchase vehicles, machineries, building, apartment etc. The client uses the portion of the assets owned by the bank on rental basis and acquires the ownership of the same by way of paying bank's portion in installments together with its rents as agreed upon. The features of this mode are elaborated below. A. The client applies to the bank expressing wishes to purchase the assets and the bank accords its approval after proper evaluation or scrutiny. B. The client deposits his share of equity with the bank after obtaining approval and the bank pays total price of the assets together with its equity. C. Before purchase of the assets an agreement is executed stipulating the actual prices, monthly rents, price of the bank's portion, payment schedule, installment amount, and nature of security etc. D. The bank shall rent out its own portion of the assets to the client as per terms and conditions of the agreement. E. The client, hirer, pays off in installments for bank's portion of equity on the assets together with its fixed rent as per the terms and conditions of the agreement. F. With the payment of installments, the ownership of the bank in the assets gradually diminishes, while that of the client increases. G. The amount of the rent receivable by the bank reduces gradually proportionate to the increase in the ownership of the client. H. The client acquires full ownership of the assets after payment of the entire dues. I. The client may acquire the full ownership before expiry of the deal by paying off the entire dues. J. The rent remains payable in proportion to bank's ownership, if the client fails to pay the due installment. S. K. The bank can take of the assets under its control, if the client fails. L. The ownership of the assets remains with the bank until the entire equity provided by the bank together with the fixed rent is fully paid off. On full payment or adjustment of bank's dues, it transfers the ownership to the client. M. The amount which the bank receives as rent is its income. The rent should not be treated as a part of the equity in any way. 10. Direct investment. Under this mode, the bank can under its full proprietorship conduct business by directly investing in the industries, trading, transports etc. In these cases, the profit or loss fully goes to the bank. 11. Investment auctioning. Selling by auction of those assets or goods acquired by the bank through direct investment is called investment auctioning. Generally, the bank establishes industrial units by direct investment, makes the same operationally profitable and then sells out on auction. This mode of investment is very helpful for industrialization of the country. 12. Quard. It is a mode to provide financial assistance or loan with the stipulation to return the principal amount in the future without any increase thereon. 13. Quard Hasan. This is a benevolent loan that obliges a borrower to repay the lender the principal amount borrowed on maturity. The borrower, however, has the discretion to reward the lender provided there will be no reference, explicit or implicit, in this regard. If a bank provides its client any loan, it can receive actual expenditure relating to the loan as service charge only once. It cannot charge annually at a percentage rate. If a loan is provided against the money deposited by a client in the bank, it has the right not to pay any profit against the amount of money given as loan. But profit should be paid on the rest of the amount deposited as per previous agreement. Investment system for import. The importers avail of investment facilities against all kinds of imports. But in case of import of commercial goods and raw materials, investments are made under bi-murabaha and bi-muajal modes, and in case of import of capital machineries, investment is made under the Sharia compliant mode of hire purchase under Shirkatul Meek, HPSM. Investment facilities are also provided for import business through bi-salam, musharaka, and madaraba modes. Import under bi-murabaha mode of investment. Bi-murabaha investment is accomplished through a single deal at the time of issuing L/C bills and shipment. For example, A. Murabaha import L/C. B. Murabaha import bills. C. Murabaha post import. Import under bi-muajal mode of investment. Most of the features of bi-murabaha and bi-muajal are alike excepting the following. 1. Bi-muajal sale is executed completely on deferred payment system. 2. The sale price is determined adding the profit with cost price. It is not necessary to disclose the cost price and the profit markup separately to the client. 3. The accounting procedure for imported goods under both the bi-muajal and bi-murabaha mode are alike. But so far as contract is concerned, they are different. Import under diminishing proprietorship method, hire purchase under Shirkatul Meek HPSM. Capital machineries and other reusable goods are imported under this mode. It combines three modes: rent, ijra, partnership, shirkat, and buying and selling. A. The bank and the client invest their capital jointly through a contract called partnership, shirkat. B. The bank leases its portion at a certain rent. C. The bank sells its portion to the client on receipt of the price under the system. Import under musharaka mode of investment. A. The musharaka agreement shall clearly lay down the amount of capital investment to be provided by the bank and the client and the profit or loss sharing ratio as agreed between them. B. The client shall properly maintain ledger, register, books of accounts etc. and have to show those to any authorized person of the bank on demand. C. For the success of client's business, the bank shall have the right to give any decision and supervise the business activities. Before establishing letter of credit, the bank shall receive an application from the client in prescribed form, which shall include the following aspects. A. The price of goods to be imported, CFR price as per quotation or indent. B. Wholesale or retail price of every unit. C. Import cost including estimated import expenditures. D. Expected sale price of imported goods. E. Per unit expected sale price of the imported goods. F. Particulars of any other expenditure in addition to the import cost. G. Estimated net profit. H. Capital and profit or loss sharing ratios. The bank shall, thereafter, receive the equity portion of the client and after completion of documentation shall make payment against the import liability and all expenses related to it as per the musharaka agreement. Fixation of liability in case of loss. If loss is incurred after performing all duties and responsibilities as per agreement, then the loss would be borne by the bank and the client according to capital ratio. But if the loss is incurred due to carelessness, negligence, or breach of any condition by the client, then the client would be liable to bear the loss. Import under Madaraba mode of investment. Under this mode, the bank bears all the expenditures related to imports. The bank supervises the use of capital, system of business operation and income of the business, etc. The client maintains all the registers, documents and accounts concerning buying and selling of the goods. Investment in exports. Facilities to export sector may be classified as A. Pre-shipment finance. B. Post-shipment finance. Investment at pre-shipment stage. Pre-shipment facilities are generally provided for the following purposes. A. To procure raw materials. B. To process the exportable goods. C. For transportation and packaging. D. For payment of insurance premium. E. For payment of water, electricity, and gas bills, etc. F. For payment of wages and salary or bonus to employees. G. For payment of freight of the ship. Sharia compliant modes for pre-shipment finance. Back-to-back letter of credit. Bank extends back-to-back letter of credit facility to exporters to import raw materials for manufacturing exportable goods at pre-shipment stage under the mode of bimutual. Initially, no funded facility is required when the LC is issued. But if the exporter fails to pay the document's value at maturity or on due date, the bank provides financial facilities under bimutual mode. Bimurabaha trust receipt. To procure or purchase raw materials for executing export order, the bank provides investment facilities to the client under the mode of murabaha trust receipt. In this case, the bank obtains trust receipt signed by the client and hand over the imported goods to the exporter. Bisalam. Investment under bisalam mode is made to meet other expenses of the exporter excepting the manufacturing cost of exportable goods. The bank purchases a portion of the exportable goods under the bisalam mode and makes advance payment for the same on the condition that arrangements will be made by the exporter to export the goods purchased by the bank along with other goods of the exporter. The purchase price is determined by deducting estimated profit. The bank recovers its dues after realization of export proceeds. Musharaka. Pre-shipment investment may be made under musharaka mode of investment if there is any predetermined investment arrangement. Post-shipment investment. Bank provides post-shipment investment facilities through negotiation, FBN, and purchase of export bills. It normally negotiates or purchases the export documents if the documents prepared by the exporter are found in order in all respect. The bank adjusts the liabilities against FBN or FBP after receiving the export proceeds and earns exchange income from this.